Okay, so this is something I've always wanted to do. Since the Oscars are coming up, I wanted to go and look at every single category, at every single nominee, and review everything. I mean, not review as in a movie review, but I wanted to look at every nominee and determine who I think should win the Oscar for each category, and who I think will eventually win. Well, okay, not every category because I don't think I can watch any of the short films because I have no idea where to find them. But yeah, I want to give more importance to like even the smaller categories, not just the major ones, but I will be also looking at the major ones eventually. But let's start with the smaller technical ones, starting with best visual effects. So just a brief introduction, when I talk about best visual effects, I like to break it down to like three like criteria. So first is believability, seamlessness into the picture, like you have to make sure that it actually, looks real and stuff. Number two, aesthetic appeal, basically like style, like believable visual effects are fine, but for me, they also need to have personality. And three, relevance to the story. And this isn't always, done by every single movie, but those who can pull off the fact that the CGI helps push the story forward usually get pretty high on the list. Alright, so the nominees for Best Visual Effects are Gravity, Tim Weber, Chris Lawrence, Dave Shirk, and Neil Corbould. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, Joe Letteri, Eric Sandon, David Clayton, and Eric Reynolds. Iron Man 3, Christopher Townsend, Guy Williams, Eric Nash, and Dan Sudik. The Lone Ranger, Tim Alexander, Gary Brosnich, Edson Williams, and John Fraser. And Star Trek Into Darkness, Roger Guyett, Patrick Tubach, Ben Grossman, and Burt Dalton. Really, really nice lineup. Nice to see so many blockbusters on this. Like, they really do need more, recognition at these awards shows. So, okay, so first I'm gonna be listing down who I think should win, like my own personal picks from fifth place to first place, and then later on I will be making my official prediction for who I think will win this category. Alright, so in fifth place I will have to put The Lone Ranger. Now, I admittedly did not hate The Lone Ranger like a lot of people did. It was just pretty meh, but admittedly, it had good production values. And, a lot of the production design was good. It's obviously, they put a lot of effort into it. My problem with this category is that there isn't that much CGI in this. Everything that used CGI in this movie, like, I'm assuming they nominated this for, like, maybe the train sequence or something. Like, everything that was done in CGI felt like it could have been done via practical effects, albeit very expensively, but you know what I mean. So it didn't necessarily feel completely relevant, and added to that, it was kind of bland. I mean, like, even just the style of everything, it didn't really have that much personality. It felt like, a typical Wild Wild West movie, but that was really it. So I'm not really sure why The Lone Ranger is nominated. It had good effects for what it was, but Oscar worthy? I don't really think so. Now, at fourth place is Star Trek Into Darkness. Now, the visual effects here were extremely good. The scene that sticks out in my mind all the time is the scene in the city where two characters are fighting. No spoilers. They're fighting and they're like, I think, on top of a car, and it's like zooming around through the city. And there's a wide shot, and I was just thinking, man, that looks real. That actually looks like actual footage of people fighting on a floating car in a futuristic city. Another thing I have to mention that a lot of sci-fi movies do, but they rarely do it really well, are just like laser effects and stuff. Because I thought the laser effects here were actually they really felt like they were in the room, like the shooting is actually happening. Because let's say Attack of the Clones, when there's like that big arena battle, it kind of did feel like just background, and then there's like lasers flying around. You didn't really feel like you kind of felt safe. But here in Into Darkness, it really felt like the lasers were being shot out of tangible guns and stuff. And another thing I want to mention is that the warp drive, like when the Enterprise goes on warp, they had this new cool effect that I thought was really much better than the first one, so that's cool. However, the thing that brings Star Trek Into Darkness down to fourth place is the fact that it's a sequel and that it doesn't necessarily bring anything super new to the table. I mean, you have a few new alien species in this movie, which I will again not spoil, but those ones are done via practical effects, which are very, very good, but I don't want to lump that into the best visual effects category, because for me, visual effects is mainly about, CGI and stuff, because, costume and makeup takes care of the practical stuff, so that's why it's at number 4. Now at number 3 is Iron Man 3. Now, I admittedly am not a huge fan of this movie. I thought it kind of lost me in certain points, you know what I'm talking about, but I will admit that the visual effects here were really, really good, albeit uneven. Most of the unevenness comes from the fire dudes. I don't know what you call them, but the fire dudes, yeah. They really did not seem all that believable to me. It really just kind of felt cheap, and when you see them, all fighting in a big group, it just, you could tell you're CGI. However, the thing that brings this up third place is the fact that everything done with the Iron Man suits, in fact, everything that's made of metal, was super polished and super good looking. Like especially, yeah, the Iron Man suits, and special mention to the suit that comes in like pieces. So there are certain points where Tony Stark in this movie has only some pieces on, but then he's still flying around and fighting. And I thought that was such a seamless, marriage of CGI and live action to the point that I really did believe Robert Downey Jr. is like flying on a harness everywhere. And again, this movie gets lots of points for creativity because you have a lot of Iron Man suits in the movie, and each of them is like really really cool to look at. Like I kind of wanted to go back and watch it again just to see all the suits, but I don't know. But this is not a judgment on the movie; it's a judgment about the special effects. And Iron Man 3 gets third place. Okay, at number 2 is The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Now, this is another movie that is uneven to me. There's lots of green screen, which is a problem with the first one, An Unexpected Journey, and you can, like, early on, you can really tell that, some of the backgrounds aren't there, really. However, that's kind of a small dent in, compared to everything else in this movie. Thankfully, the orcs finally look better. Azog the Defiler does not look like a cartoon character. Like, I thought he was actually fleshed out better, not just character-wise, but visual-wise. All the creatures look fantastic in both believability and aesthetic appeal. The spiders, Beorn, the skin changer, and again, the orcs and stuff, and the elves. Like, I just thought they all look really cool. And really, most of these creatures really do blend into their environment well. Like, the spiders feel like they belong in that forest. The elves and the orcs and their fighting, especially in the barrel sequence, that whole thing was really, really great. And that really did feel like one whole, actual barrel ride sequence. But yes, this movie gets the number 2 almost solely because of Smaug. You cannot not mention Smaug when you're talking about visual effects here. Smaug is a complete technical marvel. It's a huge accomplishment. It's like how if An Unexpected Journey had Gollum, this one has Smaug, and my god, the impressive thing about Smaug is his size. Like, I was expecting, Bilbo to be this big and then he's just enough to fit in Smaug's mouth. But no, like, Bilbo was smaller than the size of one of Smaug's teeth. And that was freaky. It was scary, really. And it was so cool to see how they detailed Smaug so well. His scales, his armor, his just everything about him. And whenever he spoke, whenever he breathed, his whole body would move. And you really did feel like this thing was a living, breathing thing on screen. Another great thing about the Smaug sequences are the environment. It's just all gold and cups and coins everywhere. And whenever people move, everything in the background moves, and it's just so well done. It's like the attention to detail is so great, and really, like by the end of the movie, you kind of forget about the inconsistent green screen at the beginning because they really made up for it at the end. So, The Hobbit gets second place. Okay, and of course, at number 1 has to be Gravity. And honestly, there's not that much I can say because this whole movie was CGI, but at the same time, this whole movie literally made you feel like you were in space. Literally. Again, everything is seamless. There is not one moment in this movie where you point out and say, "Oh, that's obviously CGI," because you have good CGI when the visual of it looks so real that you as a viewer start getting affected physically. Like you start curling up in your seat, you start getting a bit queasy, a bit nauseous. And again, the amount of detail is just staggering. Like just the look of the spaceships and stuff, not spaceships, but the satellites and then the debris coming in whenever they hit something, it feels like it breaks apart just the right way it should. And then just all the debris just flying around, all this space junk, it just really did fill everything up at the same time. You have the stars and space and stuff and the earth, and it's just put together so well. In terms of style, Gravity admittedly doesn't have as much, craziness as, let's say, The Hobbit and stuff, but this is the kind of movie that, its visual effects benefit from the fact that it's trying to go for a really realistic look, because that's the point of the movie. And among these 5 movies, Gravity is the only one that really uses CGI to really, really push the movie forward, because it really relies on the visual effects. And I gotta tell you, it worked. So Gravity is first place for me. It should win the Oscar. Now, in terms of who will win the Oscar, my prediction, again, I'm going with Gravity. The Academy is never going to give the award to The Lone Ranger because it was a failure commercially and critically. Star Trek, Iron Man, and The Hobbit are all franchise movies, and again, the Academy doesn't like doing that. And they have a reputation for not giving sequels. due regard. But Gravity has 10 nominations. It's the only nominee among the five that is nominated for Best Picture. It's an utter masterpiece, to me at least, and it's definitely going to win the Oscar here. So how about you guys? What are your picks for Best Visual Effects? And I will be coming up with the other categories in the following days to come, hopefully. But in terms of visual effects, what did you think about this year's nominees? Who do you think deserves to win? Who do you think will win? Who do you like to see to win? Whatever you think, please leave a comment and let's have a conversation.